Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Dunkirk Stories and Perspectives. I tried to say that in French, but my French is horrific. This is hosted by the Landscape Research Group, but has been put together by the group that attended the study trip to Dunkirk in 2023. I'm going to run a recording now just to introduce the Landscape Research Group, and following the recording, the uh, meeting host, Emily Shakespeare, will introduce what's happening. The Landscape Research Group is an international, independent, and not-for-profit organisation. We connect academics, practitioners, and organisations working across landscape, often across disciplines, geographies, and sectors. Our role is to support research, enable exchange, and create opportunities for collaboration. We do this through publications, networks, events, and research funding. One of LRG's core activities is the Landscape Research Journal. This is an international, peer-reviewed journal publishing original research that advances understanding of landscape across disciplines and contexts. It provides a platform for rigorous research and plays a central role in connecting the global landscape research community. Alongside the journal, we also run LEX, the Landscape Research Exchange. LEX is an informal, open access, multimedia platform for sharing landscape research and ideas. It supports a broader range of voices and formats, including project work, reflections, and multimedia content, providing a more accessible space for sharing research. Beyond publishing, a key part of LRG's work is connecting people. LRG networks are open, evolving groups that bring together researchers and practitioners across different regions, languages, and thematic areas. They provide space for discussion, collaboration, and the development of new ideas and initiatives. Networks are open to all and often provide a first point of engagement with LRG. Building on these connections, LRG also offers a small-scale research funding programme. The LRG Research Fund supports innovative landscape research projects, often at an early or exploratory stage. It is designed to enable new ideas, collaborations, and approaches, particularly where larger funding may not yet be accessible. Membership brings all these elements together. It supports individuals and organisations to engage more deeply with LRG while helping to sustain the organisation's work. Membership provides access to the Landscape Research Journal, opportunities to shape and contribute to activities, and connection to an international research community. For those who want to move beyond attending into contributing, collaborating, or even convening, membership provides that pathway. To find out more about LRG, including our networks, publications, and activities, please visit our website. Thanks. I'm going to hand over to Emily Shakespeare now.
Hi all, thanks for coming along. My name's Emily Shakespeare and it's a little bit of a blast from the past for me. I used to be in Sarah's shoes and was director of the LRG. And the whole reason we're here today is to look back and reflect upon an event, a field study event that we held way back in October 2023. And some of these gorgeous faces on here are the ones who attended. So there was 12 of us in the end. We came from 8 countries, and it was an event. We based it on the city of Dunkirk as a field trip. And it was organised by LRG and also Atelier Zatar, who is Annalena Hahn here, and Titian Hatton. So the whole purpose of this field trip was to really get to understand the city of Dunkirk, to experience in different ways. All of us come from different walks of life, different places, got different histories. So it's how we came into this area and reflected upon it and saw what it was. and experienced it in a kind of phenomenological kind of way. This was the second field study by LRG. The first one was the Isle of Arran, which is just off the coast of Scotland, so a completely different landscape. And then since, Paul Merham Kelleg had also organised one in Cairo in Egypt. So this was our second one in how we did it. Now I'm going to pass on to Anna Lena, and she's going to explain what we're going to be doing today.
Well, the booklet that is being launched today with this Zoom is very much the fruit of these 3 days that we spent together in Dunkirk. And I think what was special about the field trip was that we alternated between visiting different sites, speaking with practitioners and researchers and locals on the ground, but we also took time together around the table of our hotel lobby or in bars where we ended up in the evening to actually reflect together what we'd seen together and how from our different disciplines, because we all come from different disciplines and practices, how we made sense of these encounters. So I feel it was very much this speaking together as these experiences were happening that we then actually came to the decision to not just like each go home, but to follow on with a publication. So each of the researchers that were at the field trip wrote a small reflective piece based upon an experience that struck them, which was then compiled into the book, Dunkirk Perspectives and Stories. And yeah, it's very much due to the perseverance of Titian and William Moffroy, who will soon introduce himself, that this publication was not only has not only seen the light of day in English, but also in French. So it is now bilingual and has been nicely layouted and is available both to the French and English speaking community. So first of all, I wanted to say a big thank you to the two of you, because I know that doing a bilingual publication is quite a lot of work. And yes, William is here also, I think, in a double role. Because he was also one of the people who hosted us back then when we arrived as a group in Dunkirk. And William, I think you wanted to say a couple of words from your side to introduce yourself, right?
Yeah, right. Thank you a lot to everybody. As you may notice very soon, my English is not my natural language, and the few words I can say, Dylan, make shorter sentences. That's a good thing. Uh, um, I, as a worker of the record office of Dunkirk, I'm very glad when some people come to us, not only on the way people used to come to us for kind of classical information, birth date or event, but in order to find in the records in the archive service material for new ways of feeling, of thinking, of understanding the area in which we are working. And when allergy chose to come, thanks to Titian and Nalena, of course, we had a great opportunity to hear your way of working, your science, feel your science and feel your feelings, coming without any previous idea about the place and have to make a discovery. So I feel personally, and I think you will agree that it's very important on the field of human sciences and research to have a confrontation of the knowledge. This reason made me and made us. I think you had great time during these 3 days in 223, made us very glad and very surprised, and made us feel and write and restitute unexpected feelings and unexpected things, and I think right things about the place where I'm working. I was very interested in what you did because I discovered a lot with you. There are, of course, many things that I felt about, but some of you give me new words and new ways of looking at things. I think people working on landscapes are people whose way of looking at things is not a narrow, but probably a wide way of observation. This is the first great thing. The second is, as you know, that your group comes from everywhere in the world and have different, very different experiences of building, of aménagement du territoire, Annalena.
Urban planning.
Yeah, and so on, and that's another way. I've been very sad after you've gone because you went away, of course, but not only because all I've just said, I tried to tell it to people of Dunkirk. I told them, you know, a few strange people came here and had great time, and I've been looking at you, and I've been looking at the place and been looking at us, and they're writing unusual things about you and about us. And classical result was they didn't want to hear something new about them because they knew too well who they were, and they didn't want to be something else than what they felt they need to be. The result is I thought, and I was wrong, and I'm very sad of it. I thought that what you did would be a very stimulating publication to share with some partners, and unfortunately, I showed them, I told them a few times about it. They never answered, so I think they don't want to. Or maybe I've been wrong, I've been bad in making it, but so I choose, and Annalena and Titian helped me. We choose to publish anyway without partners, and you are partners, but local partners didn't come, and I think it doesn't matter if they didn't want, they were right, and I'm sure that a day or another, some people will come to us and say, "Oh, have you heard about what Allergy did there?" And I'm waiting now for that time. Thank you to all.
The time will come, William. Thank you very much, William. Yes. So the idea of today is, yeah, both to share something of the process of how this publication came about, but also to give you glimpses of the different contributions. Yeah, I really enjoyed many of these contributions, and we thought we want to share also some of that writing and the image material. So we've prepared several spotlights of researchers. So we have 3 spotlights of researchers sharing what they have found striking about Dunkirk. And then in the second part, we're going to go into more of a conversational format where Solène has prepared stimulating questions so that we might come into a live and lively reflection and conversation about the experience of visiting a territory and finding a way of sense making through our distinct ways of seeing.
And also, just to add to that, Annalena, we're a very small group, so we do want to keep it informal. So do chime in with questions or comments or things like that. We've become quite a collegiate group, the group of us that went away.
Yeah.
So those of you out there who are joining us today, please join in that and the conversation. You're all very welcome, and we'd love to hear from you as well. So it's not just us talking about ourselves. Okay, so to follow on then, as Annalena says, we've got the 3 spotlights. We're going to start with Adam, then we go Rachel, and then myself, and then we'll hand over to Solène and the panel. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Hello, everybody.
Thanks, Adam.
I'm joining from Folkestone today, which is on the south coast of the UK. And I went for a walk this morning and I could see France, as I often can on a clear day. So I have a strong connection when I look out there, and I know that Dunkirk is out there somewhere. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me one moment. I'm just going to share some thoughts. It's a version of what I talk about in the booklet. So I'm interested in a particular period, a particular time, and a particular place in Dunkirk, which is the time and place shown by this photograph from 1972 by the photographer Dominique Prévost, which shows the beach at Marlow-le-Bain, which was once the centre of Dunkirk's seaside resort culture. As I hope you can see in the photo, children dig holes in the sand, Families cluster on fold-up chairs, poles rise from canvas tents scattered across the beach. But behind this leisured scene, something else is happening. A ship's hulk is circled by spindly cranes, like an army of advancing tripods from H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds. What stayed with me about this image was how unresolved it feels. I don't mean that in a kind of a judgmental way. I mean the kind of what the content of the photographer shows us and what I feel like they're trying to communicate to us. So in the landscape that they capture, leisure and industry seem to face off with each other, and neither of them seem to back down. There's no clear separation, there's no clear buffer zone, there's no neat transition from beach to factory. Instead, there's just a very strong sense of adjacency. You might call it collision. It certainly feels and looks like a collision to me. So I found myself returning to this photo whilst we were in Dunkirk, because in many ways, the photo didn't just feel historic, it felt very present. On our trip together, we saw allotments sitting beside factory chimneys. We drank wine on a beach with an oil refinery in view. We stood on a hill at the end of a housing estate that overlooked over slag heaps and industry. All these things kind of rubbed up against each other constantly, which made it so kind of invigorating as a place. By the time that Prévost took this photograph, Dunkirk was rapidly developing as a centre for industry, and I'm interested in this moment. So by this point, there are steelworks, refineries, shipbuilding, and much of it is developed with support of the French national state. But at this very, very same moment, there's also more time for people and there's more money for leisure, at least in a kind of a broad economic sense. So how were these demands going to coexist is what interests me. My sense is that these things don't alternate in space in Dunkirk, they overlap. The city seems to resist any kind of formal urban zoning, which is a planning tool that was really designed to separate and rationalize land use. In Dunkirk, the coastline is not an escape from production, it's very much part of its geography. So if Prévost's photo gives us a way of seeing this condition of multiple uses coexisting, I wondered how the town planning archives might help explain this. So I found a plan from 1970. Sadly, I don't speak French, so my interpretation is fairly limited. But actually, the plan was really clear. It showed lots of different coloured zones. There was beach, port, industrial land, and it has this presentation, as plans often do, of a very ordered, tidy town of different uses. But when we place Prévost's viewpoint on the plan, it becomes clear that he's standing exactly where one zone meets another. And I think he captures just how fluid and unstable the boundary is. I'm interested in this because it's not just a conundrum to France. It's something that there's a conversation at this point in Britain about how can we adequately provide for leisure during an expanding industry and economy. And I'm interested, there's a book called New Landscapes, New Lives, New Landscapes, which talks about this. And in the book, it has an amazing image on the front, which shows a small boat drifting across a lake. But right behind the lake is this massive industrial machine. And for me, that kind of British photograph very much spoke to this photograph that I discovered in Dunkirk. So for me, the photo captures not so much a confrontation between leisure and industry, but something more exciting. It captures a landscape where the two are inseparable, not zoned, not tidy, living joyously side by side. I'll stop sharing.
Beautiful. Thank you, Adam. That was really nice, really interesting. That image is so evocative, isn't it? Of that, like you say, of things rubbing against each other and coexisting next to each other and overlapping. Beautiful. So Rachel, over to you then.
Rachel, you muted.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, I'm going to share.
Your sound is going in and out, Rachel.
Oh,
You all right?
I'm really sorry. I hope.
You're all right. Try again.
Problem. Yeah, I'm going to share. I want to share. I see. Okay.
Yeah, you're fine now. I can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh dear. I want to share an image from my website just to give you a little bit of context from about what drew me to the location of Dunkirk, why I decided to go on this trip in the first place. And I am a visual artist, an educator, and for the last 5 years, I've been visiting mining locations and doing sort of field trips in landscapes that have been very, very damaged. And the reason I was interested in these places is I was making a kind of parallel between the act of drawing and making marks on paper and the act of excavating and pulling things out of the earth and trying to understand drawing as a very expanded practice. So something that, in fact, could be, if you can draw in a way destructively, you could also think about it in a way of maybe turning that upside down or redrawing the landscape in a more constructive way. But in any case, this interest and understanding led me to visit a lot of sites in eastern U.S., in Pennsylvania, where the landscape is very polluted with acid mine drainage. And the image I hope you can all see is of a waterway that's completely filled with iron oxide that comes out of the mines and flows into the watershed. And by visiting these landscapes again and again, it started to dawn on me that, and this is really, it's a really lovely segue from what Adam was talking about, because I started to think about these landscapes as hybrid landscapes. They're places where these post-industrial landscapes are places where the human system of industry and the natural system that exists there have the boundaries have been breached, and they've created these hybrids that can't be pulled apart. And some examples are like this acid mine drainage, polluted stream, but you also have things like slag heaps, which are completely overgrown with trees, which look very lush and beautiful and sort of natural, but they're not. They're kind of these underneath. They're completely they're full of rocks and coal and all kinds of garbage. Or you can think about like a miner's lung, which is filled with coal dust. You know, there are things that they're in a way those are sort of signs that something has gone really quite wrong, that they're totems or warnings that something has that these systems have breached boundaries. And I was really interested in seeing what Dunkirk was like. It's not a mining landscape, and this is the image that I will share with you, which is, again, it's very much like Adam's image, taken from the beach near the harbor. And but I was very curious to see what the post-industrial landscape of Dunkirk could sort of teach or show about some characteristics that are also found in excavation landscapes, because I think post-industrial landscapes share certain characteristics that do have to do with these intermingled systems. And for me, there's something very disturbing about them in a way. This image shows it's looking out to the ocean, but it's also looking towards the nuclear power station at Gravelines, which is again like a very contradictory and very important thing to have. You know, we need energy, but it's also one of these things that's very there's so many unanswered questions and issues related to nuclear power. But the reason I chose this photo was because you can see that the beach is slightly pink tinged, and it comes from there's a huge factory, the ArcelorMittal factory. So there's this sort of dust that's coming from the factory that's intermingling with the sand on the beach, creating kind of quite beautiful, actually, sort of tropical almost colored beach. And again, for me, this was a very clear example of one of these hybrids that takes place in these landscapes. You cannot pull this apart. I mean, think about trying to take each little particle of dust out of the sand that's on the beach. It's an impossible situation. So for me, the very important thing to think about in terms of these landscapes is not necessarily turning them around or returning to some sort of ideal world where systems are not intertwined or are respecting each other, because we've gone beyond that. We've gone over the boundaries. We're in a hybrid world. We're in a hybrid system. And what that ironically does tell us is that everything that we do in our environments is interconnected. So the very clear ecological sort of message that comes out of these hybrid totems or monsters is that we need to be very careful about what we put into the environment, because that's what will it's here to stay. We cannot. We're very porous. We're open. We're sponges. And the fact that humans have been kind of dominating the landscape or certain landscapes in such a way that these boundaries are breached is now coming back to haunt us. And we're going to have to learn the lesson that we've, I think, forgotten, which is that we are incredibly interconnected and dependent on our environments. And I found that really fascinating in Dunkirk, because they, all of these layers of history from sort of ancient times through the Middle Ages, through the industrial history, through the post-industrial history, were also all present. So there's a kind of there are spatial and material hybrids, but there are also temporal hybrids that are also working as well within these kinds of landscapes. So for me, the sort of takeaway from these places, and especially Dunkirk, is actually quite an I think quite a I don't know, an uplifting message, in fact, which is to say that human beings are not that important, but that we are really a part of something, and we our perspective can maybe go from being much more focused on human life to really including all of the life that we encounter. Yeah, so that was my spotlight.
Wonderful. Rachel, I was just curious, because we have a little bit more time. I was just curious if you chose to not also show the artwork that you created out of that observation of sand mingling with rust, or if you would potentially want to share that with us.
I
Just
can,
as another,
surely. Yeah, I can. I didn't
I
show
just love it so much that I feel like it would be great
Yeah,
if
I will show it. I have to share again. I thought I was just thinking of one spotlight, so I chose the image. But
yeah, it's true, but it's so genius. So let's bend the rule.
let me go to the desktop then. Dunkirk. I think it's here. This one.
Yeah, that's it.
This is the one you mean. Yeah, I brought back some of the sand, and I think, in fact, this is, of course, a map of Dunkirk. And what I also loved about the map, I think it's one of the historical maps that I use. So not a recent one, but one where you see the sort of shifting of the fields and the patterns of all the fields kind of moving slowly but surely into the city map. And I spent, this was simply a mixing of the iron oxide material, which also comes from the mining runoff in Pennsylvania. But I mixed that with some of the sand from Dunkirk and sort of made a pattern of the colors slowly merging together. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, William speaking, I gotta tell you that when I wrote legends for the publication, I had to resolve the problem of a legend for that picture, and I simply wrote Rachel Bacon.
Yeah, it's a map of my experience, I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. I think it adds so much to see this, to see it.
Thank you so much for mentioning it. Yeah, glad to share it.
Okay, Emily, do you want to share your spotlight?
Yes, I shall. Now, does that come up all right? Mine is in a slightly different vein to Adam and Rachel. It's kind of a more, I've got maybe my narcissistic tendencies, but it's kind of gone very much into how my personal reflections on it. So the piece I wrote, I compared Dunkirk with my hometown of Coventry and called it Stories of Adversity, Resilience and Pride. And I suppose the real subtitle, the unofficial subtitle of that was kind of when an unfamiliar landscape feels familiar, because that's what it did for me. So geographically, they're completely different. Dunkirk, obviously, north of France, coastal, whatever the images we've just seen there. And Coventry is situated right in the middle of England, so completely different geographically. But when I was walking around, and this is a photo of the town centre, one of Adam's photos, I just found there were so many similarities with Dunkirk as there was with Coventry. So it took me down a journey of a bit of a self-reflection of where I came from and things like that, and how the similarities of these two towns. Like I say, so that's a picture of Dunkirk. This is a picture of Coventry. This is of the Broadgate. So you can see similarities there. And again, this is I'm not such a good photographer as Adam. This is Dunkirk. And then these are two images of Coventry, Coventry city centre. And just physically, you can see the similarity, can't you? I mean, it's a regular structural frame. There's modernist, horizontally proportioned window patterns of flat roofs. The shops underneath in Coventry were covered by canopies, probably because the weather wasn't so good, still isn't so good. But you still got the same structure in Dunkirk, shops underneath, and then flats, apartments up on the top, and these plain brick walls. And then another similarity was you've got the pedestrianised squares. In Coventry, they're called precincts. So they're suitable for shopping. There's no through traffic. It's to keep the pedestrians safe from the cars. And another way as well, the ethos was behind it. It was a way of imposing order on these devastated urban landscapes, which happened with both cities. And with Coventry particularly, it was very different from its original medieval winding streets, again destroyed during the war. So in Cov, as I like to call it, it was rebuilt in 1948 after the bombing. And the whole philosophy behind it was by a couple of left-leaning city architects. So the whole ethos behind it was they wanted to reflect a spirit of a newborn city and leading the way in post-war urban renewal. And this pattern, this kind of architecture, this philosophy was actually replicated in other British towns and abroad as I don't know which one came first in terms of Dunkirk, but it obviously must have had the same philosophy behind it. And it wasn't just physically I was getting the similarities, or recognizing these similarities. It was also culturally, I could feel the different things. So this is an image of Dunkirk William shared with us ages ago of the devastation post in May and June 1940. And this is the image of Coventry only 5 months later in November 1940. So, of course, this complete devastation of a city and what happens to that city afterwards. So, in terms of Coventry, our icon has become the phoenix, so this kind of rising from the ashes and reinventing, reinvigorating itself and reinventing an identity. And just as we're seeing in Dunkirk, as we saw in Dunkirk, the changes in industry moving and shifting and coming in with tourism, that's also happening in Coventry. So we had a big a thriving car industry, which kind of died, I'm going to say Thatcher years, over time. And it's reinvented itself much more recently over the last 5-10 years into a university town. So there's lots of student accommodation, and it's very much accommodating that kind of person. And then in terms of, it's not just economically reinventing, and I think this is the same as Dunkirk, but in Coventry, we strive to be the city of peace and reconciliation, to learn from this utter devastation. And it's also sought to influence the world. So we famously rebuilt its cathedral. So this statue here is in the old part of the cathedral. It was destroyed. A new one was built afterwards, which is just next door. But this statue here is called Reconciliation, and there's the same statue in Hiroshima in Japan as well. So it's kind of this outreach to different areas. So it's kind of raising the city as a symbol for a new, peaceful and united Europe. And part of this, and this is what I learned as well from having visited Dunkirk and then reading a little bit around this. Coventry was the first city to become a twin, the town twinning movement. And they started it off in 1944 with Volgograd, which was the former Stalingrad. So that was after the Battle of Stalingrad. So again, another city that was completely devastated. And they also twinned with Dresden and Sarajevo. So again, cities that have really experienced, major destruction and war and conflict. And then I discovered about Dunkirk had the same philosophy. So they twinned cities with Gaza City and also Ramat HaSharon in Israel. It's the same type of philosophy. So this is what kind of really impact me, is these landscapes that are marked by trauma. They sometimes develop stronger imaginaries of peace and are big advocates of peace. So this is what this trip has had a really quite significant impact on me, because it's helped self-reflect on my own identity and how it turned out that my landscape shaped me as well. And this appreciation of how these cities, and I think they both have that kind, they're not pretty cities. Coventry's certainly not a pretty city either, but they've endured and they're resilient and they have this proud identity.
Thank you, Emily. Very evocative. Thank you very much. Shall we head over to you, Celine, for some questions and thought-provoking inputs from the group?
Yes, we can head over to me. Yes, I want to say thank you to the speakers for sharing their snapshots of Dunkirk. It brought back some nice memories of the trip and of the city. And I'm joining you from Sweden. I work here as a researcher and lecturer in tourism studies. And so my first question is going to go to Adam, because he went into leisure and the beach. And I really like that picture. And especially because, as Adam said himself, when we think of leisure or tourism, it's separated from industry. I mean, historically, people worked in cities, they got polluted, and then the coast was a place for leisure. And then the snapshot that you showed, Adam, of Dunkirk shows that this is not the case, specifically in Dunkirk. And still nowadays, like we saw in the picture of Rachel, these things contrast in the same landscape. So I'm going to take the occasion because Adam is from England, where the seaside resorts all started, a lot of tourism history there, and then just ask, how is Dunkirk different or similar from other cities, seaside cities, especially from your experience in the south of England you're located, right? Mm.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe just to explain,
Mm.
you've hit on kind of my research interest, which so I'm at an early stage of my PhD exploring seaside towns in post-war Britain. So that goes a long way to explaining why I chose that photo from 1972, because I think it talks to some of the ideas and conflicts that are trying to be resolved in the UK. So yes, your question, how is it different? That's a great question. I'm still really unpacking what is and isn't a seaside. And in the context of Britain, what's really fascinating is it's again, I'm thinking about the previous presentations. There's a porous idea. I'm thinking about how Rachel talked about the city being porous. There's a real porous idea of what a seaside is or isn't. So if you think of somewhere like Brighton, its seasidedness is really inherent to what it is. But actually, economically, it's a city with a diverse economy. It has a university campus. So it isn't economically reliant on the seaside economy, but it's inherent within its identity. What would Brighton be if it wasn't the seaside? I mean, I can't quite imagine that. Um, and I suppose what Dunkirk makes me think about is where the a seaside history overlaps with a port history more concretely. So somewhere like Dover is interesting. So Dover is a gateway to the UK. It is probably most people would fundamentally see it as a port, but it was also a seaside economy. It had a huge economy and a built infrastructure that enabled people to come and enjoy the beach. That was totally devastated in the war. Thinking back to the photos Emily's showing there, the seaside towns weren't impacted by warfare in the Second World War in the same way that our industrial cities were. However, the ports were. So Dover was an obvious target. And what seems to have happened post-war is they used that as an opportunity to kind of get rid of the seaside and to focus entirely on ports. So I'm not convinced I've answered your question very well, but where I'm at is unpicking like really what is or isn't a seaside, what makes it a seaside, because actually what I'm discovering historically is it's really unresolved. There is no concrete definition. It is a very kind of porous understanding. But what is interesting contemporary is somewhere where I live, like Folkestone, tourism is now coming back as a very core economy. So the town's relationship to itself and its seaside and how it portrays itself is really important. And I saw that in Dunkirk. There's a strong sense of there is a visitor economy, right? It's being presented in a way. And actually, I think, Selene, you really helped me kind of see it more through that angle, how it was presenting itself as a place to be visited. So not many answers, but lots of questions. So thank you. You've made me think a lot there.
Yeah. It was a great snapshot and really to show those two things, because maybe when we think about like the landscape and the history, we're aware that there are many layers and industries, but I think if we think purely of tourism, these things are not usually shown together. So to contrast them and say that you can still have a seaside resort town, even if there are other things in the landscape more industrial, that's, I think, really interesting.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because we're now in, industrial landscapes are tourist spots. I'm thinking of that amazing place in Germany where a huge industrial landscape and it's becoming more and more popular. So that again, that there's a porous sense of zoning there.
Very interesting. And now we're going to move from contrast to hybrids. So very interesting to have two snapshots, one after the other, one that really shows how things are in contrast, but then also how one landscape can also dissolve into one hybrid. And that was, Rachel, very interesting that you spoke about this, how the human dissolves into the natural landscape. And it's really great that you showed us that photo, because my question really was, what does this new hybrid from Dunkirk mean for you and your work? How did you take it further with your other hybrids?
Thank you for the question. It's a good one. Again, I'm not sure of an answer right away. I I think I'm looking at it in terms of, well, actually, I do have an answer. I'm I'm looking at it in terms of uh, temporalities, like time zones that are all, for instance, in a mining area, you have geologic time, you have industrial time, and industry wants to accelerate. It wants to go faster, 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 and be more efficient and pull more out. Geologic time is ancient time. We have no kind of way to understand. And then you have, I call it kind of panic time. It's the time of climate, which is actually a time where things are spiraling and we really don't have any idea where it's going, and it's going fast. But it's also going, it's a bit wonky. It's not always fast. It's a very unpredictable kind of time. And I put artistic time next to that as a time of deceleration. So for me, the idea is that if you're in a crisis, it's a good thing to slow down. And so for me, that like all my work is made by hand, like that sand beach, you could see it. It took me forever, and I'm putting like tiny bits of sand there. When I draw, I'm slowing down everything. I'm cutting out little things. So I'm really, but also looking and spending time and returning to places. You know, I'd be really interested to kind of return to Dunkirk again and like look again and see, because I think that form of spending time and taking time is really important, and I think it's quite unusual now. So if I'm thinking about in my work, it's what I'm doing now is really trying to kind of piece together these different times in different types of work. I have a couple of bodies of work I'm working on right now, but I'm really thinking about how do I bring in the motifs from these different kind of time scales and really kind of put them together in a way that I think makes that reflects the situation we're in right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you showed your website. Is that where people can see your work?
Yes, there's please have a look. I had a show recently with a colleague of the work done in Pennsylvania called Hybrid Zones. So that shows actually quite a lot of what I've been doing. And at the current moment, I'm in Liège in Belgium doing a residency, and I'm drawing fossils. So they have a huge collection of fossils from the Carboniferous era, from the coal mining history. So I'm in the university paleontology warehouse drawing fossils, which is just a really wonderful way to spend your time, as far as I'm concerned. So for me, the drawing is like really slowing down. Yeah, so but I'm bringing in, you know, I also think it's important to bring in like I'm working also with the pollution itself, with the pigments from the acid mine drainage, because I want the landscape actually to be represented in the work as well. So those are just a couple of the different things I'm doing right now.
Okay, great. And then we can move on to the final snapshot, and that is Emily. Also very interesting how landscapes can be, in fact, familiar, which you showed really well in your one. And I just wanted to know, did you know it would be this similar before you got there? As this was a surprise to you?
Yeah, real surprise. So I'd left Coventry like in the 90s, like 30 years ago. And it's a town, and I'd like to hear William's take on this as well. It's a city that you kind of almost embarrassed about or dismissive of. You know, it's just Coventry. There's no kind of, you know, Adam's talking about what Folkestone has, these coastal cities, you know, it's got a lovely beach or whatever. You kind of very dismissive of it. And then going to Dunkirk and thinking, oh God, that's so familiar. And oh, I didn't realize this. And then getting to dig in a little bit more about the architecture. And I'm telling my family as well. So my family, the Shakespeare side of thing the male side goes all the way through the history. It follows the history of Coventry in terms of its industry and all that kind of thing. So we right back to wherever. Maybe the Bard, maybe not. But yeah, so it goes all the way back. So it made you reflect, hang on a minute, this is actually more intrinsic to me than I would have given it credit for. Yeah, certainly. But then I suppose you get a different experience in Dunkirk. It's got the coastal thing, it's got bigger industry, that kind of thing. It's it was occupied, whereas we weren't, that kind of thing. And we always perceive it as Dunkirk spirit. I don't know if this is a very British term, I think, in terms of rising above adversity is what we relate it to. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear from William about that as well.
Has visiting Dunkirk made you think differently about Coventry as well?
Yeah, a little bit more pride has
It's come from
come
that.
in a little bit. It was still a very grey, difficult town to grow up in, but yeah, it's you can appreciate what it's overcome and how it's re-identified and reinvigorated itself economically and culturally. And then I didn't know about all this peace and reconciliation. You'd see references to Coventry in different churches around the world, and think, oh, what's that about? But I didn't realise they'd done so much outreach in terms of this, of a city of peace.
I thought it was so interesting how all snapshots, everyone was able to relate to where they come from or other places that are meaningful to them, to their work, to where they grew up. And so that there are lots of connections like this to make with the landscape and lots of things to take home to understand the landscape or hybrids or a PhD project in a different light. And it really shows what's good with field work. And now I see that we don't have a lot of time left. So how would you like to do this at this point? Do we open the floor for questions for everyone who was there?
I think so. I think we can open
Yeah.
it up to anybody and have a conversation in how you want to.
Are we going to go a little bit over time, or should we, because at this point there might just be time for one question, or
Well, we've got about 7 minutes left, so we can just go and see how we go. We'll try and keep it to the hour. I think that's probably best for everybody.
Okay. Just okay, so I have to pick one one good question. Okay. I suppose we'll just keep it on this theme of how the fieldwork in Dunkirk has made anybody think differently about industrial cities, if it's the cities they study, if it's the cities where they grew up, the ones they visited. So how has this visit been useful for thinking of the industrial past, maybe contrasts in the landscape or how they dissolve, and then what you take home from that field trip? Anybody who's interested in answering that question? Should I point at someone? Merham? We'd like to hear from you.
Welcome everyone, and I'm really glad that we were able to make it. I know I wasn't a big part of it for this event, but I'm really glad that you planned it this way. You're taking me back to these memories of Dunkirk and our lovely group there and our lovely time. Yeah, I actually resonate with the three presentations by Adam, Emily, and Rachel. I think the three of them grasps what I caught out of this trip because Cairo, we are not that industrial city as it is defined as industrial. We have some industrial suburbs, but it's not that industrial hub. For me as an academic, I keep reading about, post-industrial landscapes and industrial cities, pollutions and everything. But being in Dunkirk, I think it was the first time I experienced it firsthand. I'm really I can understand what I have been reading about and what I have been, seeing in pictures. Now I can see it, but for Dunkirk, it was amazing and striking in a way that how things are very hybrid, how things are so intermingled. It's not what we actually teach in urban planning about, sidelining and everything has to be zoned. It wasn't that at all. And I remember being at the beach, walking this very long pathways that we had been walking through, and you have this very strong and heavy industrial site on the right, which is striking, with the fumes coming out and it's colored, and you feel that something is not right and the odor coming out of it. But at the same time, just on the left, you can see the beach, the birds, the great sands of the beach. I think it always had this vibe to me. It's always the contrast, always what should I make out of it? I don't have a clear take. Yes, this is bad. No, this is good. I can't make it. I think it was all about questioning what we have been studying. Maybe in books, it was a very striking example to me. It all comes around, coming for the community gardens with the background of the factories and the fumes again and again in different ways. The beach, it has been amazing, and also the architecture, the different types. Emily was talking about the architecture within the town squares and within the inner parts of the city, but when you go to the beach, you see a different style of architecture. It's Art Deco. It's amazing. It's interesting. And again, back to your question about tourism, and I think if we go, surveying what are the potentials for tourism in Dunkirk, we might find a lot, but it's because it's so intermingled. So it gives you, okay, this is not how we design itineraries for tourists. So yeah, I think it was very striking example to me and a very interesting experience. Yeah, and I don't want to take more time. I know that we are almost there, but yeah, this was Dunkirk to me. It's just a city of questions, I think. Yeah.
Maybe just to also invite, I don't know, Robin, or I don't know exactly what's your name, because you're signed in with your email address, but like maybe one of the guests also wants to share a comment or a question to the group.
Hi, it's Dorothy. I always forget I don't have my name on there. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. William shared with me your publication while I was on residency a few months ago in Dunkirk. He was working on the English version of the publication, and I got a preview of that. So it was super helpful for me for seeing your first impressions and what you were drawing from it. And it's so interesting seeing what 3 days worth of exploration and discussion and uh, I suppose and your prolonged thinking upon it as well afterwards. What's come after that is from listening today has been really intriguing, and I just want to say thank you for that. And yeah, I still have that copy that Williams gave me, so it's been very helpful.
Thank you. Thanks. Sorry, Solan, I didn't want to interrupt you. I just thought it would be lovely to hear also from somebody who wasn't with us.
No, that's great.
We're kind of coming to the end of the hour. I mean, it always goes quicker. I mean, we kind of initially thought, the spotlights are going to take 2 minutes, but I found it so lovely to see that actually there was so much that comes up, and it was such generous sharings, and I actually really appreciated that. Entering, I mean, these articles that I have read, but like entering them yet again through your different voices. So thank you very much for bringing this generous these generous sharings today.
May I ask
I
a
add to your,
question?
yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Emily. I would just like to ask a question from the perspective of the Landscape Research Group. When it comes to these critical field studies, this was obviously a very successful one, and you have formed a really collegiate community from this. I want to know, with respect to potential future field studies, what made this successful for you? I mean, a lot of people have expressed a lot of different things, but can anybody sum it up clearly? What was good about it? What made it work?
I just want to say Tishan and Annalena did an amazing job of looking for places for us to visit, and William was an incredible host as well. So we had some really special places to visit and contacts and people, and I think that that's what, and our group was lovely. That has to be said. But yeah, we stepped into something just incredibly magical.
That's a lovely summary. Let's try and repeat that. I know Merham has done something wonderful in Cairo. I'm just starting to look at potential locations for 2027. I'm mooting the possibility of Blind Festiniog where I live and Snowdonia Slate environment, and actually there are lots of parallels and perhaps an extension of several generations beyond the post-industrial landscape, but I'm talking from a complete non-expert view. But yeah, any inputs into where we might go next and what you would like to see from that would be very useful. But your outputs from this one are extremely impressive. The book, the new PDF flip book, which is now available on the website, is very impressive, and I shall start sending out links in our newsletters to it. So congratulations on what sounds like must have been a wonderful time.
And I'd just like to do a shout out to Martin Holland as well, who can't be with us. And another add on to what Rachel was saying in terms of success is Mark Connolly, who was just this expert in post-war history, who took us down the most beautiful journeys and evocative story. And he was a brilliant storyteller, wasn't he? Of taking us through this landscape. So just to add on to what Rachel was saying. And the fact that I think also a secret of success, it was an ordinary landscape that in our mind became extraordinary.